We've been having issues with the mics, people hearing at home, just because they're like me, they'll lean back, so we need to just come up when we're gonna speak.
Okay. All right, it's Thursday, September 14th, 2023. This is a meeting of the Finance Appropriations and Advisory Committee. And first order of business will be the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first,
Mr. Chairman, just from here on forward, we mentioned at the last town meeting that we have to start saying, we have to start acknowledging that the meeting's being recorded, so that we don't get hit with an open meeting law violation.
okay, so
That's all committees and boards in the town. All you have to do is say, this meeting is being recorded.
this meeting's being recorded. Okay, first on the agenda, before we welcome our newest member, Jana, I just want to say that Kelly, who had served on this board, I think for about a year and a half now, 2 years, Kelly's not going to be able to be with us anymore. She's got some personal obligations. I just want to say thank you to Kelly for serving on the board for the time she did, and she's always welcome to come back if she ever gets some freed up time. So thank you, Kelly. I would like to welcome a new member, though. We met at the town meeting, but we didn't officially get to hear from you here officially. So we're going to welcome Jana to our committee. And do you want to just take a couple seconds, talk about yourself a little bit?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you so much. I've been working at UMass Lowell for 12 years in student finance. I have an MBA in accounting. I'm a lifelong Dudley resident and was looking for a way to give back to the town, and noticed that there were open positions on the website. So I went ahead and volunteered. I'm really excited to try to help out and help in any way I can, really.
Oh,
So.
well, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. We appreciate you joining us. All right, so next order of business is a review of the supplemental budget. I'm going to kind of start off with, if it's up to you, Mr. Administrator, start off on the revenue side of this
Sure.
budget? Okay, so first, recently in the elections we had 3 of the 5 overrides that were passed. Just want to make sure that you counted for the revenue here. What was it, $1,755,000?
The total for overrides was $1,755,323.
That was, so the overrides that passed, fire and police, the fire was $366,765. Police was $189,347. The library was $297,528, and the school override was $901,683 for a total $1,755,323, which would bring our new taxation up to $16,606,000. Correct?
I don't have it broken down with the overrides, but I have it, it's 15 million without the overrides, so that seems pretty accurate to me.
Okay. Yeah, it looks like, I mean, the numbers add up, so. So our new tax levy is at $16,606,000, of which, what was the school budget on that?
School budget is, for the regional school budget is $10,937,991, and Bay Path is $1,128,269.
So about 12 million of the 16.6 now is accounted for just in schools. It's quite a big chunk. What is that about? I don't do the math. What is that, about 70% of our tax revenue now? Rich, quick math. 70% of our tax revenue now, just schools.
Are you looking at the 16 million and the portion of it that's paying it? Because the summary sheet is showing all of the other local receipts, plus the state aid and everything.
Yeah, I'm not counting the local receipts,
So-
I'm just looking at our tax levy. It's quite a bit of our tax levy, so hoping going forward we don't have such big raises in these school budgets, because it won't be long before our entire tax levy is going to be committed to the school. So, does anybody have any questions about the tax levy and numbers adding up?
There's if any member hasn't seen it on this sheet, it's at the top highlighted in yellow, town meeting warrant article. It kind of breaks everything down.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, at the bottom, it shows a summary, sources of funding.
Yep. Yeah, I think I got that. I don't know this one here.
This one.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see it.
Mr. Chairman, this is going to be part of Article 2,
Mm-hmm.
which I'll go over when you're ready for me to go over it.
Okay. As far as revenue, so we had some, our projected for our original May budget was, for local receipts was $3,018,334. Does everybody have the sheet that's got the, this one right here, local receipts?
Local receipts, yes.
Doesn't show, it doesn't show what we budgeted for the 24 when we originally budgeted, but, Jonathan, the local receipts that we're projecting now are up to $3,622,000. So quite a difference in the projection, because of obviously because the actuals came in.
So that's always the big question, Mr. Chairman, is, you know, we began we began planning for the next fiscal year in, January, the budget memo goes out. So by April, we're making our projections on revenues.
Yep.
And we generally get pretty close. The benefit that we have now in October is that we actually have all the actuals
Right.
accounted for, so that we can adjust our estimates to be almost level funded with the actual receipts.
Yeah, so column 1 was your actuals.
Column 1 is the actual totals for 23. And then we've adjusted our estimates to be level funded or just conservative of what was, for 24, what was actually received in 23. So for example, the first line, or the second line, assessors, where it's $12,256,091, we estimated 12 million.
Right. Okay.
And then so forth and so on. The one thing that we did notice, and we've had internal discussions about excise tax, is that we generally are we're right on target with our excise tax year after year. We're usually 1.4, 1.5, and those numbers come directly from the RMV. This year, like I said, we've had internal discussions with the assessor, with the town accountant, and I know Rich was involved. We came in a few $100,000 more in excise than what we estimated, and we're not sure why. We can guess why, which is probably vehicles were on order, but it was backlogged to getting new vehicles delivered for over a year, for a while there, and maybe that's what happened. A lot of people bought new cars, but we've asked around, we've asked on the state level, we've kind of noodled it internally, and we don't have an explanation for it. But year after year, we've come in at about 1.5, and year after year, we've estimated 1.5. This year, we came in at about 1.7.
Okay. So just go through a few of these, anybody has any questions. So going back to what we projected, I don't think you guys have this sheet, but Assessors Department, income and expenses, we projected 5,000, but it was actually 12,200. So that went up a bit. Building Department, we projected 200,000, but we knocked it down to 175, so that was kind of a cut there.
We anticipated the mills would be in permitting by now, the mill project, but
It's
it wasn't,
just
so.
not. So that's accounted by the mill project. Another notable one is the cannabis host agreement. We projected 20,000, came in at 47, so we're gonna go 45 conservative.
45 conservative.
That's good news on that front.
And, again, the cannabis situation is they're in retail right now. Their business model is retail manufacturing and grow. So they haven't realized the other two-thirds of their model right now, so we're keeping that reasonable for an estimate.
Right, but that's, it's close with the actuals. The excise tax on the cannabis was, we estimated, $1,700 on that. That came in a lot more than we thought. That came in at 88, almost 89,000, so.
They had, and again, I'll just mention, Mr. Chairman, they had their ribbon cutting last year too.
Yep.
So we didn't even have a full year of.
Right,
receipts.
exactly.
Yeah.
So that's good news there. The only other note, the larger one here is we projected 1.4 million for the excise tax. And it actually came in at 1.7 million, so that's a huge surprise. So that's good there. Fire permits were in a little bit more. Question, anything?
No, I'm just trying to look at your numbers.
Yeah,
that
just
you
trying to
have here.
follow.
Yep.
Here. Just looking at, anything that might stand out a lot. Maybe Rich, maybe you can help us with this. Our investment earnings, we projected at 4,000. We didn't project a lot there. Came in at 88,000, but we're projecting 50,000.
It's a capstone class answer. You're in a rising rate environment. So previously we were borrowing at 1%, a little bit more. Things are increasing right now. But the 20-year note or the 20-year bond issue we had is averaging less than 5. So rates are going back down. Supposed to go down by 1%, 100 basis points. And
Yeah, but these are on investment earnings.
those are our investment earnings. It's bank interest. Used to be, you had gotten 1%, 0.8, whatever it was going to be, and now the MMDT is giving us 5.25 maybe. I can't give you.
So why are we projecting less then?
Because you said the rates are going down.
We expect the rates to go down.
We're earning more on our investments, right?
And your investment earnings are on what you can put in the bank. So if money is tight, you will have fewer dollars. Think of what you get for interest in the bank for your savings account. You don't spend every paycheck. You have, X amount put aside that you need to keep liquid. You're putting it in a CD, you're getting a money market, you're getting that rate. There's no.
Did our investment balance change on stuff that's?
It's the average daily balance. We started with some money in the bank. We went through, you paid our payables and our payroll, and whatever left over sat in an account that earned better interest. And it was just that much more.
Yeah, but, okay, I'm still upside down here. We projected 4,000, which is very little.
Correct.
We brought in, the actuals were 88,000, or 89,000.
Right.
But if interest rates have gone up and our investment interest has gone up, why is our projected earnings gone down?
Because our average daily balance will be minus $1.75
That's
million
what I'm asking.
for the first
That's my
6 or 8
balance.
months. So you've started a year that has $1.75 million in an override. I won't collect any of that correctly. The town will not bill for it, and it won't be collected until that February 1st bill comes due. You may get some ahead of time when they set the tax rate, and you have people in the last portion of December trying to pay their real estate taxes in advance. All right, we'll take an extra step back, if I can. First quarter and second quarter are preliminaries. They are the mathematical average of the previous year. You'll also net out your abatements and exemptions. So if you raise $10 million, the mathematical average is 2.5, 2.5. The Board of Selectmen will host the assessor, who will go through and set the tax rate. You will take the previous year's levy of $10 million, you'll add 2.5, you'll add your new growth, and you'll add all of the money that you've put on through your newer override. So you won't collect that equally in 4 portions. You will collect 50% of it on February 1st, the other 50% on May 1st, theoretically. Some will pay as soon as they get the bill, some will pay late. The lion's share of people have their mortgage escrowed, or that's the basic assumption. 2/3 of the town has their taxes escrowed, so it's almost an automatic. So there's a cash flow issue. You're going to get a raise, Mike. You will get a raise for the second half of the year. You can't spend it. If you can't spend it, your residual amount in the bank is going to be much less. Hence, you will earn less income.
Theoretically, you're gonna have more of an average daily balance now.
Less, because I need to cover the 1.75 million that is part of this budget, but hasn't been billed yet. So I'm 6 months behind.
Okay?
So what used to
This is a
be,
one-year budget.
pardon?
This is a one-year budget.
Correct. And all things being equal, your budget went up, and the money you're raising comes in later. So you'll have a lower balance.
Anything you wanna add to that?
No.
Anybody have any questions on the
My
earnings?
apologies if
No,
I'm...
I think what Rich is saying is that you're not carrying the, we're not gonna realize the override money until halfway through the year.
Right.
Well-
So it won't sit there and it won't earn the.
No, that's exactly right. But if $88,000 came in on lower investment rates, previous actuals.
Everything
Going
started
forward.
everything started to increase maybe the beginning of, it's only been a short period of time where you've been able to get these rates. So we borrowed money last year for 1.25, 1.5. I might have an original. For what you borrowed your money at. Last May, 1.5% is what you borrowed money at. January of 2022, you had a one-year note at 1.25. So it's only recently. So January of 2023, you had 5.5. So maybe half of the year, but there was a premium on this note.
All right. All right, just for, personally, it just seems a low projection there. But, I guess we'll see at the end of the year. Anybody have any questions on it?
No.
Continuing on the revenue, well, I got you, Rich. Municipal liens gone down? Still budgeting the same, but they were up. Actuals were 36,000. We're still budgeting at 25 for revenue, 25,000.
So we'll go back to lower rates. 2 years ago, goodness, you were hunting for 25 basis points. You were shortening things up. Right now, rates are increased, so maybe you're just refinancing fewer times or not at all, and there's an inventory shortage. So you can sell your home at a higher price, buy a cheaper home, but your mortgage is going to be the same price. So you're locked into the larger house because all things being equal, your monthly payment will be the same plus whatever equity you might have had. So
These are-
you're going to have fewer of them.
Through the chair, these are municipal lien certificates you're talking about, right?
Correct. And anytime there's a transaction from a
A
bank.
refinance or
It's
whatever.
it's the satisfaction of the lender to have it recorded so that nobody is inheriting a headache.
So I think that makes sense, Mr. Chairman.
Mm-hmm.
If the market is slowed down, then there wouldn't be as much call for it.
Yep.
But
Anybody got any questions on that at all? The only other one that I see on here that's, marketably different would be, the solar payment. Is that the solar payment, or is that the lease for the cell tower? $100,000 more that we didn't budget for?
Oh, for the,
Yeah, all the way down the
The last
bottom.
line.
Yeah, so miscellaneous reoccurring.
oh, Amoresco, because now we got the go-ahead from DEP to put that array
It's
up.
all been signed and
And
everything?
it's all signed, sealed, and delivered, and it's actually
so-
in pre-construction right now.
Okay. So, I mean, it's it's positive news here. I mean, it's, our local receipts went up a bit more than we thought, so that's excellent news. All right, anybody have any questions on the revenue?
No, we like revenue.
What's that?
We like revenue.
Yeah, exactly. Without having it. And everything else stayed the same? The indirects, really stayed the same, from the water and sewer, 212.
The indirects are the same as we've been contemplating right along.
Cherry sheet is all the same.
Mr. Chairman, what was that cherry sheet number?
Somewhere around 35,000, I think. 34,000? How did that change? It changed by 10,000. Alright, so cherry sheet is up by 10 grand and our overlay is up by 7. Am I right?
I didn't remember the
Wait a
overlay
minute.
number
Alright.
changing.
Status?
The cherry sheet is up from 2.266 to 2.299. I don't remember the overlay changing though, from what we were talking about before. Oh, you're talking about from last fiscal year, Mr. Chairman. You're talking about last year,
Yeah,
okay.
above last
Yeah,
year.
okay. I'm still going back to May and then June
Yeah, I know,
And
because we got
August.
all these budgets that we,
and, yeah.
all right, so it looks like everything there stayed relatively close to the same. All right, so on the revenue side, does anybody have any questions they want to ask regarding what's coming in? It's all nice, positive. So I guess what we'll do is kind of go into the town budget and see the different changes in the town budget that you're proposing. Moderator, so the selectmen. All right, so you're changing the selectmen's by quite a bit. So you're adding in, we're adding in a control off, the animal control officer, is that what that is?
Yeah, can I just do this, can we just look at this sheet
Yeah.
first, so that everybody, as we're
Sure.
going through it, will have an idea as to what we're gonna be looking to do in October? It's the sheet that says, it's a yellow highlight, Town of Dudley Town Meeting warrant article.
There it is. Okay.
So, our advice from 3 different sources, auditor, council, and DOR, is to handle Article 2 in this manner, rather than to go through and look at our contingent A amended budget that was passed on July 25th, and try to transfer and go back and forth. We'll be there until Christmas, trying to figure that one out. An article is gonna be drafted to approve the next column that says 10/16/23, adjusted final, and to rescind contingent A. That way we're starting clean. And then if you look to the right where it says funding sources, specifically those override questions that passed, that column shows, for example, under the school budget, we start from 0. We add in, as required under the law, the amount that passed for the override, 901,683, passed in the August 17th override, and then we add up to get to the 10,937,000 through taxation. And it shows all the funding sources next to the bottom line budgets of each department. So it's fairly simple what we have to do here. We have to
So we're gonna-
approve and rescind.
Yeah, so we'll be, so FAA, we're gonna make a motion first to rescind contingent A.
The way she's doing it, she's gonna draft a motion for the FAA,
Okay.
and it will
We
include.
rescind first, and then we go
You
move,
do everything at once.
we're gonna try to do it all at once?
You're gonna approve, and then at the end of the motion, it'll be and to rescind contingent A. That way, it's approved and rescinded at
All
the
right,
same time.
that's- Sounds easy enough.
Sounds easy enough. The
Does
good-
everybody know why we're doing that?
Yeah, can't approve 2 budgets.
Right, I mean, you could take the contingent A, and we could spend 3.5 days amending everything and discussing an amendment to everything.
Right.
Or just simply clean it and take it off the table and offer them the budget.
So when the override passes too, as you probably
Right.
know, but I'm saying it for the TV, I guess.
Right.
When the override passes, that amount must go into the budget. The budgets we have now are the contingent A budget that was approved on July 25th. So, and as part of that approved July 25th budget, for example, the district already has their assessment of 10,937,000. So you would be required, if you didn't rescind contingent A, to be adding $901,000 to that assessment, more than what they're asking for. So rather than to transfer and move and everything else, we
Right.
rescind and
And that contingent A only accounted for that one.
And it only accounted, right, as
override
we've been.
passing, so with the other 2 passing, and with the new updated revenue numbers, it would be a lot of work to amend all these things on the floor. And
Right.
I can see us being there for, coming back for the second day to try and
Right.
fix this, so.
Please. So, the good news, Mr. Chairman, is that when we rescind contingent A, we're not using any stabilization in the 10-16 budget we're proposing. Those
Yeah, that's-
stabilization accounts go back to where they were previously.
Now, if we're not using any stable, budget still requires 2/3 vote, right, no matter what, even if it's stable in it or not?
It requires 2/3 votes, I think, because you have to set the compensation for elected officials in May, and I think, doesn't that require 2/3, Rich?
And the treasurer's budget has some money going into some trust accounts.
Does anybody have any questions on that sheet, or do you have anything else you want to go over on that sheet?
The only other thing I would say, Mr. Chairman, is you and I spoke briefly the other day, and I was unclear as to whether or not we were gonna have free cash. We're getting closer to having everything straightened out so that we can get our free cash certified, so we may have it by then. If we don't, and I hope we do, but if we don't, then those few budget articles that are gonna appear on the warrant are gonna have to have a source of funding, if not from free cash, from stabilization. But it's
You think
small.
we'll have that by our next meeting? So we have a scheduled meeting for what, the
28th, when you're gonna be voting on your recommendations, because the warrant's gonna be posted by now.
the warrant ahead of time?
Yeah.
Have to sign the
Any
warrant.
anticipation on the free, when, you think?
We're making, well, according to the town accountant today, we're making good progress on it, and we should have it in time for, hopefully, we should have it by the town meeting, hopefully in time for, or have no reason to believe we won't have it for the town meeting by the time you vote on it. But if it had to be stabilization, we would just have to amend the motion on the floor for the source of funding. We have some unpaid bills, which are, I think it's less than, it's probably, I think it's less than 10,000 unpaid bills. I think it's $270 for one bill, and maybe just barely over 1,000 now from another, so that's in comparison to what we're dealing with, small amounts of money. And there's a transfer for an unpaid bill from water retained earnings, which won't, so we have a source of funding for that. I'm trying to think of what the other one might be.
Okay. All right.
And like I mentioned, the 2 elected officials will have an article on there for
Right,
their annual
so Rich, you
increases.
and Lori will have your own articles, okay? We have Jeff here. Why don't we jump forward to the highway?
The highway, Mr. Chairman, came very close to passing, passed in one of the precincts. And as I mentioned, there were 32 different combinations that could have occurred depending on how those votes turned out. And we were fortunate, between the revenues we just discussed and 3 of the 5 articles passing, to be able to make some adjustments and fund departments, including highway.
So, just going over the highway, little increase in the salary, superintendent salary, that where you want to be?
There's a COLA line item under municipal expenses that will be used for all non-union personnel. There was a little increase. I didn't change that amount from what we were originally discussing. We just had the evaluations. It'll be 2.5% to 3% increase. I don't think that's quite that amount, but that's what that will be. And we'll have a source of funding for that in the cost of living adjustment line item.
Buildings and ground assistant? We putting on an assistant? Jeff wants to speak to that. Part-time assistant or something?
So currently, there hasn't been a buildings and grounds assistant for the last couple of years, and other than in the summer months, because of all the maintenance with the cemeteries. We have 5 cemeteries, and then the town hall and the library building that we have to take care of. So what we've done is have had seasonal help, so that would fund that position. Other than that, the foreman's position currently is not restored. That was that was actually limited due to the budget cuts. The restoration of the mechanic's position, which was a layoff, and the mechanic took a new position with another company. And then there were 2 truck driver positions that we'd be looking to restore as well. And those have been recently advertised, and obviously we wouldn't be filled until interviews happen and the actual funding is solidified with the town meeting action.
Over the last 2 years, Mr. Chairman, we've lost 5 positions, some due to
Yeah, I know.
transfer, some due to retirement, some due to fear of the permanent layoff and taking another position. So we're proposing to fill 3 of the 5.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on that? The stormwater. How we funded that a different way?
Is that under,
20,000 you're gonna put towards that?
we went,
Is that the inspections, or?
Yeah, there's reporting requirements for consultant fees and engineering fees for dams and stormwater. And so the annual cost is running the range of $20,000, and that's a statutory requirement. We really can't do anything about that. And then the stormwater, the MS4 report, which is due at the end of this month, is something that I've been doing and submitting on my own, but occasionally there are requirements for a retrofit plan to be done, which requires a consultant for that to be done too, so.
that was, Mr. Chairman, you're probably remembering that stormwater dams was funded under municipal expenses, but because it's almost 100% handled under the highway, I moved it into the highway budget, and it's not funded under municipal expenses anymore. We just moved the line.
No, I said you're just moving that.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, all right. Same thing with, well, obviously the paint, right?
Yep.
Road maintenance, you're doubling that up to 45 from 20?
Well, again, that was an item that was funded to a higher level last year. So the reduced budget at the 10% level was 20,000. 45,000 doesn't even reach the level that it was at last year. So,
That's potholes. That's for like potholes.
Yeah, right.
And
potholes, patching, drainage issues, drainage maintenance. We've had to rebuild some drainage structures, replace castings on occasion.
Right, does anybody have any questions?
The only question I would have about that is like, so if it was kind of a goofy stormy winter, could we move that around, the road maintenance, to some of the snow removal stuff?
Oftentimes, that's the case because it's a level, or because it's a bottom line budget. The $95,000 is somewhat lean on, for the funding for the snow and ice. And it's kind of purposely done that way. It's typically overspent. We just received, we put in the order so that we were able to maintain last year's prices on road salt. We're probably going to receive the last of the delivery, 1,000-ton delivery tomorrow. So that's about $75,000 worth of material just in that. So in all likelihood, we will, as with most other years, overspend. Even in the past couple of years where we've had relatively mild winters, you're still out treating the roads with road salt or de-icing materials. So.
Is there anything else anybody wants to ask? And Jeff, you're comfortable with this budget? Well, should I say comfortable? I mean, you can manage with this?
Well, we're going to have to do whatever we have to do to live within the means, so that's, I do have some concerns about being able to manage snow and ice where we haven't been able to hire people yet. We've lost, again, 5 positions, like John said, due to retirement or transfers as well as layoffs. But I've been actually taking steps to try and come up with, getting some assistance from other departments. I've spoken to the fire chief about, potentially using some of the call firefighters if they have any desire to do plowing, use them as a provisional employee. Same thing with water or sewer, if any of those guys. We do have 2 employees from the sewer department that have worked as part-timers in the past, and we do have a handful of part-timers that come in and use our equipment. And so hopefully we're able to fill those roles and be able to provide adequate service, so,
All right, thank you, Jeff.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
thanks.
Why don't we go to the, do you guys want to go through these from start to finish, or do you want to?
Yeah,
just
might as well
start
go
from the
down
top
the
there?
Yeah, if there's any questions, now's the time.
Yeah, we'll do it now, and that way we can make our next meeting quicker. Just look in. So, administrative assistant, 5,000.
Yeah, well, that has to be moved up, Mr. Chairman, that's on the wrong line item. That's stipends.
That's
We're
like,
restoring stipends to the board. That's a misprint.
oh, salary, no, I'm sorry.
Salaries, right.
I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong one. Animal control, so is that just a part-time salary? What's going on with animal control and the assistant and all that? What do you?
So, animal control, this is an example of an efficiency gained by going through this crisis. We're working right now with the police union to have a full-time officer serve also in the capacity of animal control officer when he or she's on duty. That would, and the pay for that would be we have $15,000 budgeted overall. That would be a $10,000 stipend for the officer annually, with a small escalator every year, but that reasonable $100 or $200 escalator placed on it every year. We have a grant that would train that officer, a 120-hour grant, train that officer to become an ACO, and 16 hours for competency training in that position. We would use an existing vehicle, and
Sure.
we would use one of the existing police vehicles. We had a discussion back and forth with the SUV or the pickup, whatever the case may be, whatever the chief falls on. We have a pre-existing K-9 vehicle to begin with. We used to have a K-9 officer, so whatever is more cost-effective. We're gonna use donations, an additional $5,000 budget for ACO to upfit that truck, and we'll be in a position, we have a 40-hour-a-week ACO with really easy terms to come out after hours, maybe comp time, but we're still in negotiations about that, but it's a much better deal for the
Yeah,
community.
it sounds it, but say that again, 40 hours a week, the animal control officer?
The police officer, the officer who takes on the role works 40 hours a week as a police officer, but
He gets
you'd
called
also have
in.
you also have a dual role where the ACO would be on duty whenever that officer is on duty. And we would have some sort of agreement worked out with the union where if
What about overtime?
it would probably be comp time. That's what it's trending towards right now.
Anybody have any questions on that? Okay, really, that's really about it, I think, on that. I mean, there's a thing here for dues, so I don't even know what was those dues?
Dues.
$1,200 you're throwing back in for dues, what is that for?
That's for professional dues, like for ICMA, MMA. That's a Mass Municipal Association. We pay it through that account.
Okay.
That's, what's that?
It's the bill is 1,700 for MMA.
All right,
It's actually underfunded, but we'll take care of it.
any questions on the selectmen's budget? All right, then we'll move over to the administration budget. Most of it stayed the same. We got a little bit of a,
Temporary fill-in labor,
yeah, that's a,
which almost doubled.
think that, you know,
That gives me a budget to work with. I don't know if you remember, we had a few interns last year that come in and help during the busier time. They've helped everything from billing through the treasurer's office to working in my office. We have a unpaid intern working remotely now. And it just, we have a very low staffing level right now, so the ability for us to bring in people who are, you know, mostly being trained at Nichols in a business environment and help
yeah,
us
that'd be nice.
around the town hall has been great. So, I actually was looking at that 7,000, hoping that would be enough to keep the wheels on the place at a 10% decrease, but now we're kind of pivoting to having the ability to bring that program back and help, you know, offset the time that would be required if we were to otherwise have to hire another full-time employee.
Selectman's secretary. Got that up a little bit.
Yeah. So Michelle gets a stipend because she's the cemetery clerk.
Yep.
She's the parking clerk. And she gets these different stipends. I've taken those stipends and I've added it to her base pay. Instead of playing around with it, it's now in part of her base pay. And her merit increase will be based on that 58.5 amount rather than the previous 56 amount.
All right, this one kind of doubled up, huh? You get more, your contract benefits doubled up from 22 to 44?
Yeah,
It's pretty
that's-
much doubled them.
That was on, 4,472 is the actual amount of contract benefits. I was gonna cut my benefits after 6 months because I had no other place to cut the budget at that point.
Okay.
But that's the actual
I mean,
number
if I
for
could remember
raises.
all the stuff we went over
Yeah.
back in April,
Yeah.
you know, but, all right. Vacation buyback went up. Are we still doing that? Are we working towards a policy of not buying back vacation, like a take it or lose it type policy? Are we discussing this? Selectmen, maybe?
That hasn't made it to the discussion board yet.
Not yet.
No.
All right, so the building inspection went up from 8 to 12. What are you doing with that?
Mechanical inspection, as we were making our cuts, we knew that we had to turn the AC off,
Mhm.
and turn the heat on. So we funded it at 50%. Now we'll actually be able to, at the end of the fiscal year, turn the heat off and the AC back on and do all the maintenance required. That's the actual budget for the turnover and the maintenance on the system. So we have a vendor come in and do that on a regular basis. When we were looking for places to cut, we only said, let's make sure the heat's on this winter, and then we'll see where we're at in the summer, so we were able to refund that amount.
When you turn on the heat, don't you just, there's a little button right there.
It's a cooling tower, it's a big thing, everything's gotta be greased and oiled and filters changed and everything that goes along with that.
All right. Any questions on administrative?
Does that include the elevator, Jennifer?
No,
No.
it doesn't include the elevator. But Jeff is in charge of the building and grounds, and I notice he's sitting right there if you have more specific technical questions to ask.
No, I don't. I mean, it doesn't take any kind of certification for this, right? I mean, so that position's yours then? Is that how that works?
Well, I have oversight the.
Oh, no, he doesn't get paid that. He has oversight over it. We have,
Oversight.
that's payment for the vendor who comes in.
Okay.
Yeah, so the buildings and grounds person works under the highway department now. There isn't a separate buildings and ground department. So I have oversight of whatever goes on with that. And the, just for instance, to the $12,000 for the mechanical, that preventative maintenance quarterly, that's quarterly filter changing, as well as the, bringing down the cooling tower and switching over to heat and whatnot. And in spending that That's the amount that we contract with the mechanical contractor. And that $12,000 probably actually saves us money, because in the past, it was maybe $25,000 or $30,000 that was spent because it was a reactive process to the issues, so. Preventative maintenance has really gone a long way.
Any questions at all? Nope. All right. So we'll go to the FAA Reserve Fund, which we didn't fund in the budget. We're gonna fund by $20,000, which we usually have something in that account in case an emergency comes up. Think 20 is enough?
Whatever you think, Mr. Chairman.
I'm a little worried about gas prices and our fuel costs, potential.
Oh, if we have free cash, we could certainly change it, but
Does anybody have any thoughts on,
What have we historically used it on when we have had one?
fire engine,
fire engine? We had bought the used fire engine, didn't have enough money for it, so we transferred that to take advantage of that deal. There was, some beach coverage at one time we had to cover the beach, stuff like that.
it's intended for an emergency that comes up.
Yeah, we kind of park it there for emergency type stuff. I'm just a little concerned because of the fuel in all these budgets seems to be still projected a little low with gas prices going up a little bit.
And heating oil and everything else.
Yeah, so, I mean, we can bring it back to the next meeting, but does anybody want to put any thoughts into putting a little bit more in that? Do we have any, so we don't know what we have for free cash. Current free cash, is that what you're using? We only have 17 grand in free cash.
What if we did this? We need to back down on, I mentioned that both elected officials are going to have a separate article at town meeting for their increases rather than have it as part of the budget. Maybe we go back and we level fund their salary line items because they're currently budgeted for the increases in there. We level fund those line items, we'll move both of those amounts of money and bring it up to
So you're talking 2,500 apiece?
Somewhere in that vicinity. I'm not sure what the difference was, but it'd probably be around 25 to 30 in between that with FAA reserve.
Any thoughts on that, Rich?
And this is the budget that's not using any free cash?
Right.
We don't have any free
We
cash
don't have anything
certified.
certified.
It's been assembled with no,
Correct.
so maybe we leave everything and there should be that final article, leave 20 in, put an article at the end, your free cash comes in, hallelujah, twice what you expected. That's where you put in your additional monies. You've got a complete package here.
Right, but I just
For
wanted to
argument's sake,
put the
with
thought
no-
out.
with no free cash, the free cash would just be that frosting on the cake, or, we'd be good Yankees
what-
and hang on to it until the spring special town meeting where you plugged a hole that you hadn't anticipated.
So what about the free cash that was left, 17,000? What is,
Don't think that counts for
That,
anything.
that 17,000 had to be, because it's not gonna be used in this budget. It was already included in the existing budget right now, but because we're rescinding that budget, it's gotta be dedicated to one of the reserve funds, it's one of the stabilization funds. We checked on that.
it has to go to stabilization?
It has to.
So do we need an article to move that?
No, it will just,
It'll just reflect in our
correct.
stabilization amount?
Yeah. Yeah, if you look at, she listed out here. She didn't list it out, she did list it out somewhere, but. Yeah, on the overview sheet, Mr. Chairman. So the balance between both stabilization accounts will be 811,373.20.
811?
811,373.20.
So I guess we can discuss this at our next meeting. If we want to amend that, if we get free cash numbers, to park a little bit of that free cash there.
I mean, the worst thing, the absolute worst thing that could happen is if we ran into an emergency and we had to overspend, is it would have hit our cash for next year, free cash for next year. So if you only had 20 and we needed 50, it wouldn't be insurmountable. We'd be 35 grand behind, 30 grand behind.
All right, town accountant. So,
What's that? Well, the plan is, I had to spend all my time making sure she didn't retire within the last 6 months, because then we'd really have problems, but the plan for her is she's just talking about retiring. She's made it public, so I'm not breaking any news here. She's talking about retiring in this fiscal year, maybe the beginning of the next one. The plan is for her to come back part-time as the assistant at the assistant's rate of pay and help onboard the incoming town accountant. That 76 grand reflects 32 hours. Next year, I'm gonna ask for a 40-hour-a-week position and the assistant. So that's gonna go up somewhat next year to add that extra 8 hours.
does our accountant on the board have anything for that one?
I mean, it needs to be staffed, in my opinion. So, I mean, where she's outgoing, like, I don't see any other way to do it. I think it's smart, honestly, to have her around to onboard whoever is stepping into her shoes.
Yeah.
You can't just throw somebody the keys for a position like that.
Absolutely not.
Especially for $76,000.
Right,
Yeah.
well,
I
the
don't know what
positions,
accountant coming out of college
realistically,
is
it's
working
gonna
for
be more,
$76,000.
it's gonna be more in the 85 to 95 range for to start.
Okay, infotech. You're funding the online services, what is that, 26,000?
26,000 is the annual fee for all of our permitting, licensing, complaint system, everything to be online 24/7. And what it does is it electronically routes paperwork all throughout the departments. They have to sign off. It's a lot more efficient. If people don't have to be, waiting in line to pull a permit, they can do everything online, upload documents, either migrating it to the planning department, conservation, everything. So it's all gonna be basically web-based. And for less than the cost of half of a position, it's worth every penny of it.
Help desk went up,
Help desk
is that part of that online service, or?
Help desk, no. Help desk is for all of our IT needs during the day. You put in a help desk request, you get a ticket number, and we farm it out to a private vendor, and we buy a certain amount of hours, and that comes up to 12,000. And that was generally what we budgeted over the past 2 years. And we've been pretty much on target with it.
Cybersecurity expenses went up, 50, funding it at 15 instead of 10.
Cybersecurity was actually 23. We figured we had to cancel this, we canceled the service because of what was coming, and we're gonna try to turn the service back on now that we can afford to do so.
Is it gonna go up that much, you think?
Well, it's actually less, it's like $2,300 a year for,
Really?
actually, I know it right off the top of my head, let me get you there. Like $1,900 a month.
Chairman, just through you, is this the gentleman who was before?
Yeah, it's Demetrius.
Demetrius.
22,800 is generally what we pay for it. That's our network, that includes HIPAA requirements, police, fire, everything else.
Right, we get props for that, for our insurance. There's a separate cyber liability. Think of what's in the computer, and just think that worst case scenario,
Okay. Any questions on any of that? All right, I guess we'll go to Board of Assessors. Looks like you wanna, what is that, adding part-time, or you gonna make that a full-time clerk?
That's not even a full year of funding, hopefully, we're gonna try to hire back in that position. The assistant, the clerk assistant in the assessor's office took a job, what is it, 39 hours?
I was gonna say, we don't have anybody there, right?
No, because she took a job in Oxford when she was noticed for layoffs. So that 38.8 is the remainder of should
Is
carry
she-
through the remainder of the year.
Is that position the one that goes out, takes the pictures and stuff, and is that what that
She
is?
used to measure houses.
That's your new growth.
Huh?
That's your new growth.
Oh, no, I was just wondering what the salary was for that.
You'll also notice, Mr. Chairman, cyclical inspections in RRC personal property, 24 and 21,000. Those were, if you remember, we deferred those articles. I just put them right into the budget so that it's two less things that we have to worry about.
I mean, they really should be. I know we never did that. We always put a separate warrant article for this stuff, but.
It's just because it's difficult. It's not the same amount every year.
Right, but
Some
it's
of them
not,
are every 2 years.
it's not a
It's
heck of a
more
lot
expensive.
different, though.
No, you're right.
I mean, from one year to the next, I mean, it's still up in the $20,000 range, $25,000 range, so. Vision Cloud System, is that their fee, their actual fee? $76.88.
Yes, that's all the online, assessors, the database that shows the property valuation cards and so forth. We have to pay for that service, and it's been temporarily suspended. Because of the unknowns, we'd like to turn it back on.
And you're gonna refund for the education,
Yes,
and that's all state requirement, right?
of course, yeah.
Any questions on the Board of Assessors budget? Okay. Town treasurer. So we'll have an article so you're gonna pull that out, is what you're gonna do for the next meeting? Is that what you're saying, the salary? And make it an article?
Honestly, what we'll probably do is, we'll pull it out, and Debbie will probably wanna leave it in the budgets in another line item, so we don't blow the entire budget process up by moving that money, but
Is that, Rich, is that commonly how we do it? Do we, is your salary in the town clerk's salary, we always fund it
Elected
with free
officials'
cash, or-
salary in the spring town meeting would be a continuation. It always seemed to be the adjustment in the fall, and it was an amendment to the town meeting, to the budget.
Amendment.
It's an amendment, so you're not saving anything by not including the salary,
Right,
just
but
the
I just want to
increase.
make sure the legal, the right procedure.
You're doing it twice this time. You're rescinding the old budget, you're level funding, and then you'd add a raise or a cost of living or whatever you'd like to call it in a separate article, or you could put them both together.
the legal requirement, when you either have to call it out as part of the motion for the budget,
Yes.
or you have to call it out in a separate article, but you have to call it out when you set the compensation for elected officials. So even if we pull these out, we still have to call it out as part of the motion, which we
But
will,
if we leave it in,
and,
and we still call a separate payment, are we gonna vote on an additional 2,500 to the 102? If we call it out in the separate
no,
article?
because if you left it in the way it's standing at 102,582 with the increase, you'd say, as part of your motion will the town vote to approve the budget listed on the sheet as proposed budget 10/16/23, using all sources of funding, including setting the compensation for elected officials. If you do that, you can just leave it that way.
What if it got voted down? So say we pass the budget, now we're at the warrant article for those two, one of them gets voted down, let's just say. So now we're gonna come back and amend?
No, because you can pay them right from the article. You don't have to include it in here, you can level fund it in this budget, and as long as the article is approved at town meeting,
All right, I
Debbie
just
can
don't want
pay them
anybody to get
directly from
confused.
the article, yeah.
It looks like a raise, and then we're throwing another raise on top of it, with an
No, no.
article.
If that were to happen, so, for example, right now, there's a discussion about having it stand alone as a separate article with town clerk and town treasurer collector. You would necessarily want to change this budget to reflect 99,594. And then you would vote on the article separately. And if the article is approved, she can pay them directly from the article having been approved. If it's denied, they stay at the level fund.
Okay.
But if you don't want to do the article, and you want to include it in the budget for the amount requested, then you have to say as part of the motion, including setting the compensation for elected officials, which you're gonna say anyways, because it's already in there for the
In
stipend.
the motion for the budget.
Yeah, correct, and then you're covered with that.
The town clerk and I have spoken, and the plan was to meet tomorrow to discuss just what's going on. I won't speak for the town clerk, but I'm more than happy to stand here tonight and at the selectmen's meeting and find the number everyone's happy with. Then the next step would be finding the best way to go through. And I agree, if we're going through the budget process for the umpteenth time, we don't want to be here at 11:45 or going into recess for the successive night arguing over semantics. So if I could tonight, we'll be in touch with the town administrator, chairman of the board of selectmen, obviously you, chair of the FAA, with any changes. I know,
What if-
of course.
Historically, we've not had it in the budget, and we had the separate articles. Correct?
Because previously, there was a Maytown meeting that said fiscal year 1, fiscal year 2, no change. And then in the fall, it had been the increase of fill in the blank, whatever was approved going into the fall. So you're in a unique situation right now.
You usually end up deferring the articles in May because we don't have.
It was a
final
rubber
numbers to
stamp,
go over.
and compensation can't be addressed any other way. Must be addressed at a town meeting. So,
Any questions? All right, we'll figure out how we'll get kind of 2 weeks, and then we'll get together. Do you have any questions, Jenna, on that?
Not right now.
Okay.
Take it away and think about it a little bit.
Other line items? Wait a minute, where are we? Treasurer, am I missing something? Is that it?
No, just there was a collector clerk increase.
Oh, I don't have that sheet. I'll look on yours.
Oh, okay. Am I in the wrong?
I had to separate mine.
Right. This-
Oh, the collector clerk, that's because that is, well,
No, I mean the handout, Mr. Chairman. I had a few duplicate pages, and I went through and just sort of lined up by account number. As I saw the repetition of moderator, selectmen, you had the first 3 or 4 pages a few times. Separated it out.
All right, I'm gonna go by this one.
so the increase in collector clerk, Mr. Chairman,
Yep.
I don't want to step on Rich's toes, but we're looking to fund it for the entire year. The previous 10% reduction only contemplated half the year, so we don't have to lay anyone off right now, so we need to hire into that position. That's the full funding for the year.
Okay.
And actually, that position's been vacant for quite, before the beginning of the fiscal year due to resignations.
All right, so you're gonna fund that fully in this?
That's fully funded, yeah.
Okay, so we get the clerk. Just a question on how we word the salary for that. Maturing debt. That's dropped down to 365. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good thing.
It's a good thing, yeah, but
No, it isn't.
I know you like to have the debt level out.
The original iteration of the budget did not have any consideration for the override. We have some debt excluded items which were purchased. The plan was to pay them in 1 year. You had fire chief's vehicle, you had a police cruiser, 60,000 each, so you're at 120. You had the highway brine machine with 110. We had a short-term note that was going to get paid in full. 60, 60, 110 is our 230. So instead of paying it in fiscal 24, we put it together with an additional $60,000 police cruiser, the ladder truck, which was debt excluded, but we won't receive until this year or pay till next year, fiscal 25. Also non-debt excluded items such as we had a $1 million water line, we had $700,000 in a separate water project, we had $400,000 for the Tobin Farm betterment, and $65,000 for the Partridge Hill betterment. All of those together, we gained an advantage. We increased the par amount for each of the issuances. You can't go less than $5,000 per year per issuance. So we put everything together, so instead of paying the $230 in year one, it's been spread out over 4 years. The $60,000 police cruiser, which would have been the third of the 4 debt excluded, will have the 5 years because we hadn't borrowed for it yet. The fire truck was only 5 years. We had the option to go longer on it, but for argument's sake, 5 years, we're not going to try to get 10 on a loan for it and try to jump through that hoop. The $1 million for the water department is 20 years.
That's the SRF.
No, there will be 1.9 and 1.7 million dollars, 2 separate borrowings for non-SRF water projects. The term shovel ready. There was a sewer, there's the SRF for a 5.225, there's an 11.6. There were certain things that needed to be done that didn't go into those projects. There's your $1 million for your pipe. There's $900,000 for the engineering to bring things back online and some of the repairs. That was the first issuance. The second, the $1 million was the portable PFAS remediation cleaning device. And then there was $700,000 in some engineering and some additional piping for it. So in essence, you have 2 stations on Schofield Ave and a West Main Street station, and you are bringing water to a single point where the big PFAS remediation unit sits. The portable unit is in place, but will become part of the bigger cleaning process, which I believe is expandable. So I'm not George Petrinos, but I'm still handsome.
Bob, just,
That's kind of how we're
Well-
there. It's the non-SRF, so you are paying market rate for them.
I know you're putting the water and sewer into all of this, but water and sewer, the debt service for the water and sewer is in their budget.
The reason I make mention of it is when the town went to market, for argument's sake, if we were just going to bond the $65,000 for the Partridge Hill Road betterment, we probably wouldn't get an email or a telephone call. We bundled together over $3 million so that we could get enough investment where you were starting to see some gains going longer into the market.
Okay. I don't know if that totally answers my question.
We were looking to pay for it all at once. There's a distinct
So-
advantage
so
to spreading it out over 4 years and deferring one of the
Your
payments.
debt service,
Yes,
that you projected at 560, what would you project it at, 595?
yep.
That included paying for the brine.
And the 120. So that's your
And the
difference,
what?
that's your 230. 120 and
For the brine.
110, yep, 110 for the brine, 120 for the two public safeties is 230.
Right.
Brian and 2 cruises.
Yep, and that's the difference of the 230. You'll pay more interest because you had an interest-only payment for this year.
So you now changed the debt excluded amount to
Right.
over 5 years for these versus the 1
Right.
year. Is that reflected in the debt exclusion money? 'Cause I didn't see it.
Number's
So your
803.
debt, okay, but your debt exclusion, all right, went down to
And your debt,
803.
yep, and your debt excluded number doesn't tie out to the treasurer's budget.
No, but that's still the revenue that's debt excluded. We still debt excluded that, but now it's 5 years?
It'll hit
Starting out
on,
with five.
years 2 through 5,
Okay.
if this is year 1.
I just don't want to come back in our next budget and see this change from that to $600,000 in debt service, because we didn't. You know what I'm saying?
It'll go up by proportion.
Well,
So
it's
if we
gonna go
didn't
up
pay
on
it
the
this
fire
year,
truck, right? Because we haven't debt excluded, we haven't accounted for the fire truck yet, right?
so we'll take a step back. We had the option on August 1st to pay it in full. We did some planning ahead of time where it was going to be an interest-only payment.
Yep.
We had the bond issuance on August 1st, which means February 1st, we will start with our first interest-only payment. Our principal and interest payment will be on August 1st, 2024. That's when we'll hit the debt exclusion
All right.
point.
Anybody have any questions on that? OPEB trust, you're gonna fund that by 10,000?
That's been the number we've been trying to hit.
Does that even get us anywhere near where we gotta be, $10,000?
No.
Is it even worth it at this time to fund this thing? Maybe, how many hundreds of thousands or millions are we in?
Millions. Millions.
Millions, I mean, does it make any sense?
The actuarially advised annual contributions got to be $750,000, if not 900. I want to say Needham was funded a few years ago because of opportunity, or
There was a,
it's a promise made outside of Proposition 2.5. You never had to address this issue in 81, 82 when Proposition 2.5 went through.
So what exactly does $10,000 do here for OPEB? I mean, you're saying $750,000, we should be funded at that. We haven't funded it at $750,000 ever.
Correct.
We barely funded it at $10,000. What is it?
Back to your discussion on vacation buybacks. It's in a perfect world, you'll have a compensated balance account where you would go through and you would take, on average, the amount of payout, you would hold it in trust, you would earn your interest on the trust, and each year you'd continue to add to it. Perfect world, you'd have 50 employees, all of which would give you 6 months, 1 year notice, and their payout would have been part of what's held in there. It's the same thing of the OPEB trust, other post-employment
Right, but I'm just saying,
benefits.
we're so underfunded at this point. $10,000, it's like
But it's,
shooting a pea shooter at a battleship.
and at one point, with the $10,000, we'll get into the $100,000 range. And we'll go from fixed income securities to being able to get into the equities market, because all of our special revenue funds and our trust funds will hit a certain point where it's advantageous for us to go through and get some money into the equities market and start to get those bigger returns. It's an anomaly that you're getting 5.5%. What's the average of the stock market over the last historical average? 6, 7, something like that. So with zero risk, you're getting 80% of what it is. The idea is it should go in there. It is the right thing to do. I agree with you.
I see it come up, all the time. Sometimes we fund it, sometimes we don't. It's $10,000, I don't know what it does.
And ideally, there would be several $1 million sitting in a trust.
Right.
It would go through and it would pay off the health insurance for your retirees. So at the end of the day, you would have the new assistant treasurer start on day one, and you would start putting money in specifically for the benefit that is promised at retirement. So you're putting money in year 1 and year 26, we have a retirement, and the health insurance plus the interest gained over that period of time pays the health insurance benefit with no impact to the current budget. Little money over a period of time. This is the same thing that you have for your retirement system. You have members who had time in at the 5% rate. They didn't start taking deductions until 1988. It was a pay-as-you-go. Now it's at the point where you need to go through and fund it by 2028, given absolutely no issues in the market or any legislation that changes things. So you're paying things at an accelerated rate when previously you hadn't.
Some towns override to fund it.
I didn't hear that.
In 2003, it was under 300,000. It should have been debt excluded at that particular point. You would have rested well, knowing that those increases. In the last 5 or 6 years, your normal cost has gone from about what you would have paid for Medicare, Social Security, 6.5%. Your normal cost is over 8.5, plus it's even more with public safety, because anybody hired after 2012 is on a different chart.
Anybody have any questions?
No.
On that? All right, where are we going to next there?
Municipal expenses.
Municipal expenses. Treasurer, Board of Assessors. Municipal expenses. So you brought up your energy. Is that the dams inspection, the 8,000?
The seal or weight salary is the inspections that have to be done on all the gas pumps in town and so forth. Parking clerk, I mentioned about Michelle being the parking clerk. You can see it's zero funded, and I put that into her salary.
Okay.
Energy municipal expenses, 93,363 was the actual.
Yep.
So if I brought it up to the actual number that we spent last year.
Auditor.
DMs is 8,000, that's inspections, and I think everybody's aware that we're working really hard to get grant funding to remediate some of those dams, but we still have to keep up with the inspections and file those inspections, that's the cost of it. Auditor is the general cost every year that we pay for our annual audit. We also have a single audit if we reach a certain federal grant award threshold. Is it 750, Rich?
Correct. It's,
COLA? Is that?
COLA is all the non-union employee merit-based increases. So that'll be spread around with all the non-union employees based on their performance.
And so it looks like we have another student enrolled in a
Yep.
vocational school?
That was an actual from the district.
What is it? Do we know what that student's taking going for?
it's inspections.
Dam
What's that?
inspections.
Damn inspection.
Dam inspections?
Yeah.
Okay. Do we know? Is it a he? Do you
I
know who it
didn't
is?
get that deep down, I just asked for a number, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. But that's a definite?
That's what we're told.
Does that include transportation too?
Transportation is fully funded.
Fully funded?
That's, again, what I'm told. I asked the question.
Okay, another 30 grand for that, jeez. Copier machine. Anybody have any questions on the municipal side? All right. Town clerk's department. There's not a whole lot of change there other than this, other than the same salary issue.
Same salary issue, yeah.
Okay. So you can go back to that next week. Not much change there. Planning board. We're gonna increase his, up his salary.
That's the actual from this year. We kind of drooped down on his salary with the cut, maybe just basically to balance. But he's gonna be, he's back in business with 46.2 actual from this year.
Okay. No change for the zoning board. Anybody have any questions on the planning board at all? Yeah, all right. What do we got? Not gonna run through all this, just the, is that right?
We had one patrolman that the board, selectman accepted his resignation at the meeting on Monday.
What's that?
We had a patrolman resign on Monday.
Another
Not on
job?
taking a more lucrative job. And so we'll need to replace that position, but that position will actually be probably slightly lower in salary.
So, is that, hold on, I gotta get my calculator here.
Was that Patrolman Conde?
Yeah.
I highlighted that. Sorry.
All right, so So 87,206 was the increase from the contingent budget with the override, but. It's right there. How much was the override for that? What did you have that?
183, 347.
What? Is that a misprint then? Contingent A amended? What are we missing
I
here?
have number 1603.
Yeah, I got 17. So John, on your printout, it's got contingent A 1.7 for the police. But in your other one, what does it have it?
1603, 24.
1.6, so that would be the correct number.
The 1603?
Yeah.
I'll have Debbie check that.
Yeah, that 1.7 is not correct. Because it's only an $87,000 change from the contingent A, where it would be, you have to reflect the entire override, which was the override for the police was 189. So does that add up, John?
Actually, this would go about 20,000 more.
About 20,000 more? Is that because of the police officer resigning?
Police officer resigning didn't get lowered, but not by 20,000. Overtime went up, fuel went up, computer supplies went up. Lieutenant was off the probationary period, he went up. Quinville went down. He restored some reserve officer salary.
Expenses went up from 40 to 70.
Well, that was with the 10% reduction, that was one of the line items that he cut. But we're gonna be looking at, with hiring a new officer and so forth, there's gonna be
That's
some
this one
other
here?
thing that's gonna be required.
Yeah, it's right there. So we get, there's a couple numbers off here, John. So, on your sheet here, if you look at the the police department, it's showing, which I think was the correct number, the 1,603,000.
Yeah,
On the budget.
shows
breakdown,
1.7, right?
1.7, so
Yeah.
that's, where is the, it's just a misprint or a miscut?
It could be, I'll ask Debbie to take a look at it tomorrow.
Alright, so we'll get back to that next time we come in for the meeting. Just wanna make sure the numbers are right, cause I don't, if it doesn't add up. How about the fire department? Actually, is there any questions on the police? He's not here, so.
This is supposed to be this. Slightly under this. So that's conflicting.
How about the fire? Where are we on the fire? Is that changed?
So
fire's off a little bit too, I'm not sure why.
They didn't add the actual, they started with a 0 budget and they added the override amount, and then they adjusted the budget because the only thing that was contemplated with A was the schools passing. Now there was more flexibility to do different things with different budgets, and I think that reflects it. So in other words, they didn't just simply say, we're gonna go with, we're rescinding contingent A. We're not gonna just go with, just blindly add numbers to contingent A, because contingent A was developed with only one override question passing. So they started with the baseline of the amount that was passed for the
I mean,
override. And
for
then they
the-
made adjustments so that they could do things like hire some highway guys back and, go back and forth with it. So the entire amount is in there with the baseline, but there were some adjustments made to allow highway guys to be hired back, to allow for inspections and increased fuel costs and.
I mean, the proposed budget looks right, but I just think the contingent A on this sheet is off.
I think the contingent A is.
Yeah,
That was,
it's-
I think, it's probably off from, you looking at the John Breyer version or the town version? Because this is based on the John Breyer version. That's the
No, it's
one
still
that,
I'm looking at both. His contingent A though, didn't change anything in the fire department.
no, it changed the
The only thing he did
library,
was change what he.
library, I think.
Yeah, it was just reflected, it was basically the same as we passed on the May 23rd, except we added about 10,000 to the library, was
Yeah.
that part, that was really about it, and then
Yeah.
it was contingent on the 901. I don't know, we'll just have to kind of square these numbers and make sure these are correct, but it does look like the override is appropriated properly. You agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
For that one.
Does anybody have any questions on the fire department, other than some of these, contingent A being off a little bit?
What are you looking at, Mr. Chairman?
Uh,
What are you comparing it to?
So, on your
On this sheet,
sheet here,
Oh, yeah,
so
between
if
that
you
and
look
the
at
line
fire
item
and
budget?
police,
Yeah,
the contingent A budget is a different number than in this,
Okay.
this big sheet you gave us here. And, if you add the override for fire and police, that sheet works, but this sheet
one works.
That's all. So,
okay.
but I think the budget still adds up to the same, so I'm just trying to figure out where. Any other questions? Any questions for the fire department other than that number being off?
I'm just saying this is, if we're looking at these numbers, we take this number, we add in the override amount,
That's,
it comes out to 1532. I mean, so that's a 70, that's about a.
still a difference.
It's about a $63,000 difference, which is sizable.
Is it a lower amount difference?
What's on here?
Yeah, we're off, he's got it off
Yeah.
by 63.
Yeah, it's off by about 63,000. That it's, the fire department is underfunded. If we took the number from.
From the contingent A and added the override directly to it?
We add that in there. Where we have a proposed budget of 1.469. If you add those numbers together, it comes out to 1.532.
Underfunded. So that's why we're taking it, we're starting at 0 and we're adding 100% of the override amount to it. And in some cases, they didn't fund to the full amount, just adding A to B. because we're trying to move some money around to do things like highway and so forth.
Okay.
Because there were 32 possible combinations, so it wasn't just an exercise of add the entire amount and move on. It was just, let's figure out what we need for the year. Let's look at it as a status quo budget, and let's try to get other things that didn't pass funded as well. So I think that's probably what you're seeing the result of. But you're right, if the contingent A is, I'll ask Debbie about this, it's probably a copy and paste.
I think that's what it is. Because you got it right on one sheet,
Yeah,
well, somewhat right. I can, you can account for some of the changes, because I know we're already into October here, well into this budget, so I know you're gonna have some different numbers, but, does anybody have any more questions on that, or? Okay, how about Board of Health?
Board of Health, are we looking to hire a full-time agent?
we don't have any choice at this point. That we've got it, so we funded it. And the adjustment I made with that was, I took some of the expense away, because we have a private vendor that's doing the food inspections. So if we hire somebody full-time, we'll have that person do the food inspections as well.
I'm good with Board of Health.
Building inspector?
Building inspector is funded part-time with his increase built into it.
You're gonna add a part-timer, associate inspector?
The associate inspector is actually a stipend, if necessary, to pay Jeff Murray, who's getting his building commissioner license. If, for some reason, Nelson retires, we don't have the money to hire a building commissioner, we'd be looking at health agent money to do that. We can have him step in until we can find a way to fund it. If he, so we do have a stopgap. We funded it up to $10,000.
Jeff's all certified to do all that, right?
Yeah, well, he's got a few tests. He's certified and appointed as a local inspector now. He's got a few more tests to take to be in the clear, but he can do it now. Yes.
That would be a big help. Any questions on building inspector? All right. Shepherd Hill, or the Dudley Child Schools, their budget now is set at $10,937,991. So it's close to $11 million as you can get. And Bay Path is at 1.2. We already went over the highway department with Jeff. No changes in the recycling center. Veteran services,
So we had
benefits went up by 155, is that?
we made a minor cut to balance those benefits. They're reimbursable, so we monkeyed it around a little bit to get
Right.
the previous versions to balance.
That's about accurate, 155
Yeah,
now?
yeah.
All right.
And we're
It's all
we now
reimbursed.
have an IMA where with Webster, where instead of hiring, because we're gonna meet the population threshold to hire a full-time veterans agent,
Mhm.
we can either do that, or we can have a regional veterans district. And so we've signed an IMA with Webster, and they pay a portion of it December 1st. We pay the remainder of it. I think the salary is about 70. Oh, yeah.
Other towns do it, so.
Yeah.
Contingent A had the library at 370.
So that was another change, Mr. Chairman. Contingent A was, the library was 360. The contingent A amendment added 10 to it. And they need to hit a target increase in their materials budget.
I was gonna say, you're up at,
So we had to increase that so that they would be able to maintain certification. Their original request way back when was 409,
so
I think.
material, what is that? So material is what, 20% of their budget, is that what
With
they gotta do, something
17.
like that?
17, yeah.
17%?
Yeah,
So that why, that's up. Okay.
that's why that's up.
Anybody have any questions on the library? keep saying library. See, I went to Shepherd Hill, library. No other changes.
And they've posted for a director as well.
So you just said the program expenses that was in the contingent A budget, the 10,000, we're basically taking that out because we don't need to have that, right? Since we're. That,
Program budget?
yeah, the program,
They can get that
program
from-
expenses.
When I talk to one of the trustees, they'll work through the endowment for the programming.
Okay.
So that's why that was removed.
All right. What else we got here? State assessments.
Cherry sheet
Remains-
chargebacks. Chargebacks for your cherry sheet, they give you money, but they net out.
It doesn't change, so. All right. So budget change was 612,000. But we pulled out stable, which was how much?
We were 534 was stable. So we're in pretty good shape, Mr. Chairman. For now.
Can't
This
wait
is
a
why I
couple
called it,
months.
listen, that's why I called it the status quo budget with the selectmen the other night, so nobody gets excited.
No changes to water and sewer. All right, this last page. So with, so total budget, you're looking for is 26,707, 254.
26,707, 254, that's correct.
Oh, you're not including your indirects on that?
The indirects would be part of revenue, right?
Right, yeah, I mean, excuse me. 22. So everything complete, 26,707.
26,707.
So does that add up? So 612, 762 plus the 901, what was it, 901 what? 683? Still only gives you 1.5. Are we missing numbers here?
Is it because of some of the questions with the police and the
Police and fire with
stuff?
333. 9, that would be 1, 2.
You know what I'm talking about here, right? Sorta?
But the total sum of the overrides.
Yeah, so I mean, the change in the budget from the contingent up is only 600 and something thousand, but that doesn't, that, you're gonna take out the 901.
The 901 is already, right, the 901 was already included in the previous
Right.
one.
But so that brings us to a total, if you add them together, of 1,514,000. But the total override was 1,700,000. Am I missing something?
So let's go back to a foundational point. We're looking to account for everything. So we had $1,755,323 was all of your
Overrides.
overrides. We're gonna go less the school amount. Here, give me a second here. 155,323 less 901, what was it, 683?
683.
Yep.
Gives us 853, 640. The 534 is being returned to stabilization, so that's a funding source we're not using. Is 319, 640.
Is that our change in revenue? Oh, that's about our change in revenue right there, right? Projected revenues?
What, you'd have to go back to your,
I think that's pretty close.
what did you have for the original? Because you'd have to go back to an older version of the budget to take your local receipts, and there would be growth.
That's right, because the revenue projections were less.
Right. But, so our revenue
535,
projections.
534 wasn't used. Richard's budget went down because of the maturing debt.
Yeah.
Moot point, you're talking bottom line budget. So you have your bottom line, and the difference between the contingent A should be, you're looking for the 319.60 so far, because the school was in there. The school was in there, stabilization's not being used, so you're looking to account for 319. And it would have to be whatever you're raising and appropriating and your local receipts, that'd have to account for your difference. You need to have a previous version of a budget, because right here, local revenue, local receipts lists out your actual and your estimated for '24, but that's as of today. You had a May number somewhere for that.
The May revenue amount, is that what
The
you're?
May revenue amount, I'm thinking, is the difference if you're looking to tie it out.
Yeah. Crap, I think I threw it away too. I had it printed out.
So our total with,
These numbers would not be because kids would have had. You would have had 911.
right.
So these must have been.
Yeah, that column is,
These were Jonathan's from the quote unquote Armageddon budget.
that's what they are.
Yeah.
So that's gonna be a talking point, the idea that your revenues changed by 319,000,
Well, more.
all things being,
Well, our revenues are 3,644,489. We projected in the budget 3,204,246. That's 440. Our revenue projections are 440 more than our original May budget, and the contingent budget was using the same revenues. So not much of a change, so there's a big change there. 100,000 we can account for. You know, that comes
you've
from
got a
the,
bellwether year as far as local receipts go.
yeah, these, doesn't seem like it's adding up correctly. So you got 440 more in projected revenue and a 1.7 more in override money. Subtract out the stabilization and the difference in the budget, and it still seems pretty off there.
Our projected revenue is $3,018,334 in May.
So is this number correct, John? So you have with your indirects, 3,644,489.
Where's my revenue sheet here? Projected revenue, 3,622,082. Is that what you're asking me, mister?
Well, I'm counting the indirects. I mean, you can go it either way, but, so,
3,644,489?
yep.
You're at 3,018,000.
So that's 440 more than we had in our original
Projection.
projections. So you get the 440 there more. You have 1.7 million in tax revenue. Add that, then pull out your stable, and that number should be where the increase in the budget is. Or am I missing something? There
We
was no
decided-
ARPA money, right? Pulled away?
Do we have the argument over the indirects in May, or do we have that in more recently?
It was on Monday.
No,
We're not gonna change the indirects at this point.
no, but I guess the question is, when we projected,
The original amounts were in there for all versions, much to the dismay of the chairman.
Say that again, Rich, or my hearing?
The indirect dollar amounts were there for all of the iterations.
Right, we're not changing that.
212.
That stays at 212.
Correct.
I mean, maybe in the future, if you get somebody else does something with it, I don't know. That's up to the selectmen.
The consensus is indirect costs and the current formulas likely do not recapture the accurate amounts. So the longer it's reviewed, more and more things are investigated. Clearly, there's been changes since '99, when the original formula was put in place.
All right, well, we're not taking a vote tonight on any of this. There's a lot of stuff to digest here. I just want to make sure the number, just looking at everything, I know I'm missing something somewhere, but I want to make sure that the additional revenue and the overrides coming in is balances with what we're proposing for a budget.
Do we have a meeting before the 28th, where we have absolutely no time left to do anything?
No, I mean, we could all go home and kind of digest this and, have any, questions or
around at these
ideas.
numbers,
Maybe
yeah.
we can, email each other before, can we do that? And then come back on the 28th with a couple questions and a recommendation?
Yeah, we need to post on the 28th, so.
Yeah, I mean, we
that
got no
raise it
choice, right?
close.
Yeah. I just want to make sure the numbers.
Board of Selectmen have a meeting on what day?
25th.
25th, and there's going to be the public hearing. When is everything going to happen?
Oh, the FAA's public hearing?
So the Board of Selectmen are gonna vote on to set to post the warrant on the 25th, and I would anticipate the FAA voting on their recommendations on the 28th, because we're out of time at that point.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I really would love to see the bell rung and get as many people you had too many people with a little bit of information. Well, how did I not know they had their public hearing? Why wasn't I notified? And some people's threshold for adequacy is questionable. I think the town of Dudley is moving forward, having a successful override, and the effectuation of this, really, we should broadcast it. Thank you. This is how we're going to do things, as opposed to having that war at a town meeting where there are just more and more headaches. I mean, I'd much rather stay at a selectmen's meeting or an FAA meeting for an extra hour to make sure that the average person who's mildly watching this has the opportunity to have a question answered, rather than a mob showing up and all
Well,
of a
yeah,
sudden.
and that's why we're going
looking
over
to
all this stuff,
defund.
because we don't wanna have,
Right,
you know, a mistake or a number's not
agreed.
right, and then we're in the same thing where you get the trust issue, so I wanna make sure everything adds up, so at the meeting, this adds up. No problem. So we'll take this kinda home, everybody kinda look at the stuff. If you got any questions, email.
You want to put something on before the 28th?
What's that?
You want to put something on before the 28th? I think we're really pushing it right to the last second. Everything was going so well.
I
It
mean,
always does.
Everything was going
It
so
always
well.
does.
I mean, it's up to you guys, I mean, we do have a joint meeting for the 28th.
Yeah? How about the
Probably
25th?
gonna discuss
Yeah.
more, the warrant, I'm assuming.
If you want, I'll schedule a separate FAA meeting before the 28th.
I mean, does anybody have next Thursday open?
I do.
You do? Does anybody else can make it on Thursday?
Yeah, just not me.
You can't make it?
No, I can make it.
Can I make it? Not sure.
Yeah, I can make it.
So why don't we do that then? Why don't we, schedule a follow-up meeting for this, and we'll clear up everything we got, and maybe we can even, at that point, take a vote.
And could that be the public hearing on warrant articles too? Because you always have a public hearing on
Well-
warrant articles.
Are you gonna have them ready?
Warrant articles?
For next Thursday?
I'll have them ready.
So we can go over the warrant articles, we can have a public hearing on the warrant articles also.
That'd be good that way, get it all
Yeah.
done.
Do you want to give me specific questions, or do you want to email them and copy, actually email them right to Deb Thibodeau, and copy me on it?
Okay,
Copy everybody here on it?
yep. You guys agree with that? Okay. All right, so we'll schedule a meeting for next Thursday? About the same time, 6:30, good? And hopefully we can kind of finish this up a little quicker.
So, I mean, the glaring issue here is that, for some reason, it's got to be a copy and paste issue, it has to be.
Yeah, it means,
Contingent A, because it lines up on the bottom line budget, but we'll just go through it and
all right,
figure it out.
then I'll get in touch with you this week or whatever, next week. All right,
Sounds good.
sounds good? All right, any other miscellaneous information? Next on the agenda, miscellaneous, anybody got anything they want to add? No?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second? Did I hear that? My hearing's off, so.
Second.
And second in the motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all right.
Great, thank you.